Hey guys, just a quick video on the Boss Street Cube 2, getting to know exactly what the EQ does, what each knob does, what effect it has. So at the minute, as you can hear, I'm running some white noise with an analyzer there. I'm just using this parametric EQ to analyze the EQ curve. So first of all, start by turning up the bass, see what effect that has. I think we can all imagine I'm getting a lot of clip in there, but yeah, so this is the kind of effect, and then I'll turn it down so we can see it starts to go from, yeah, you're losing from about 300 hertz, it starts to go down, and then it comes down here, so that's about, I don't know, maybe about a 10 dB cut. Yeah, it's a little bit difficult to do this because it starts clipping just the way it is. I might see if I can reduce the volume a little bit and do it. So I'll bring this down and I'll boost the bass. Yeah, we can manage to do that now. Yeah. So yeah, it doesn't seem to have, when you turn the bass up fully, it doesn't seem to have a huge effect. So then I'll just put that back down to unity again. This is coming down to 12 o'clock. There's not a massive effect, but then if you cut it, then it's more noticeable. So yeah, you can't add much more bass using that. It doesn't seem to add much more. It sort of keeps it flat, and then it adds a little bit really low down, maybe at yeah, you sort of like 80 hertz maybe, but it doesn't seem to do a whole much. Okay, this is the middle turned up full, and that boosts, as I suspected, around about 800 hertz, maybe. Is it about 800? Sort of centered around, yeah, maybe 800. And then it trails off here, and then that's about as far as it goes. So yeah, I mean, it does go right up to 2000 kilohertz, and then we'll just try the cut. So that's back to 12 o'clock, and then cutting. Yeah, you can see the scoop there, and that's, yeah, about 600 hertz, centered around 600 hertz, and then up to about 1400, about 1.4 kilohertz. It goes as far as that, so it's quite useful. I'll talk about why you might use it and what it's good for. So obviously that's your high, just does what you'd expect. It's just a standard sort of slope, and then back to middle, and that's full again. So it does what you'd expect. So I'll talk about some things that I think are useful when you're singing. Um, you know, so if you was to cut the low end, you can take advantage of something round about here. That's about 230 hertz, and you see it starts to go down, and especially 100 hertz here. So there's quite a lot removed at 100 hertz. So this is useful. 100 hertz is where you get all the stuff like, I forget the name now, but it's all like when you say P, B, P, and it kind of makes like a popping sound on the microphone. So that happens, I would say, in my opinion, around about 100 hertz is where you get a lot of that. And say like if you knock the microphone, every time you bang, if you bang on the floor, sort of sounds like that. I think those kind of sounds, a lot of the sounds that you don't really need, it's a good thing to remove it. So I mean, personally, I haven't had this long, but I sort of tend to go about here with the bass. So it's cutting some of that out, and also then you can take advantage of something called masking, or the opposite of masking. So um, round about, I think, two here, here at 250 hertz. If you've got any way at all of removing a little bit of 250 hertz, then I would do that before you run your microphone into the compressor. That's just my opinion. That's the way I do things. If I've got any EQ at all, I like to put it before the compressor. I mean, let me know your thoughts. If that's completely, if that's completely bonkers to you, and if you're an expert who's been working in, being a sound engineer for many years, and you know much better than that, then, or maybe you agree, and you could explain the science behind how it works. But I find, so, well, let's take the opposite, right? So say if you was to, you can't really, that's boosting as much as possible. It does boost around, it seems to be around, you get a little bit of a boost at, what's that? Yeah, you can boost at 100 hertz. I don't recommend doing it for vocals. You just get muddiness and masking. So masking, it's around about, I think it's worse at 200 hertz, 250 hertz, 100 hertz. Those are frequencies I think you need to remove some of from your singing. A lot of 100 hertz, like I say, that's a lot of where you get all the bad sounds of the microphone. You don't really need. It doesn't really add too much to the vocals. You need some, otherwise it'll sound really thin. But if you find that your vocal needs clarity, a lot of people will reach for this. That's the high frequency. A lot of people will go for that. But there, here you get another word. This is where you introduce a lot of sibilance to your singing. So, if you're talking into a microphone or singing into a microphone, and you get all the sh sounds, you get the sounds that are like sh, sh. That's probably means to say, if you're getting excessive amounts of that, then it probably means you've got too much of the high frequency. So treble, as it's called here. So I think, roundabout unity, maybe add a little bit. Sometimes you might need to take a little bit. It depends how you're singing, obviously. Depends on, the location and the acoustics, everything like that, all these kind of things. But I think for me, I've been quite liking, just being at 12 o'clock or near 12 o'clock. Sometimes I think it's better to, it's useful to add sometimes take a little bit away. But for me, I think round about 12 o'clock for these, and then, like I say, take away some of that bass. You can hear it. I don't know if it picks it up, but you can just take all that. It takes away all that rumble and things. So just pull back on the bass. Obviously, you want your voice to sound bassy and full, but it's not always the best place to look. Here is not the best place to look for bassiness in your voice. It's not adding the right frequencies. And sometimes you may need it. Like I say, it depends on how you're singing. But I definitely, if you are going to be, probably, if you're using one of these, you won't be using a compressor. I think it's got some inbuilt compression. I can talk about that in a minute. But most likely you won't be using a compressor. But all the same, if you was to be using a compressor, I don't like to hit my compressor with too much low end. You see, if you've got a lot of low end and you're hitting your compressor, it'll be over compressing it, and you'll have this problem. Even if you're not using compression, you'll have this problem called masking. So masking happens where you have too much, maybe 250 hertz to 200, possibly, too much 100 hertz, maybe even too much 300 hertz. It depends on your voice, but so, like I say, some people will reach for the treble, some people will reach for 2.5 hertz is a very common on mixing consoles, you know, 2.5 hertz kilohertz is often there to add brightness. But for me, if I wanted to add brightness, I'd use an equalizer. I've got a couple of different equalizers that I use sometimes. Sometimes I don't bother. But if I was to use an equalizer, and I felt like the vocals needed some clarity, some brightness, a great way of doing that, I think, is just cut out some 250 hertz and around that area, you know, 200, 250, maybe a little 300, not as much 200, because you know that's where your thickness starts to come from the vocals. But 250 is just the muddy part of the vocals. Now, if you remove that, and I swear this is true, removing 250 hertz works better than adding a bunch of treble. I don't think you'll ever get as much brightness or clarity by adding a load of treble, because all you'll be getting is sibilance. You can hear it hissing away. That's all you're getting. You're just getting all that, you know, thinness and sibilance and feedback and things like that. It's introducing feedback. That's where the feedback is. There's two places where you get feedback. Well, two main places. Right up in the top end. Tell me in the comments if you disagree. And then low end. You know, you get all like woo woo. Sorry for my impersonation. You know, try to do it, but that's the kind of thing that you get. You know, when you put too much low end in, it's all a question of balance. So, rather than adding 2.5 hertz or kilohertz or loads of treble, try removing a little bit of 250 hertz. Remove it out, take it out as much as you think you need. Obviously, it's not take it all out, or you know, any set amount. Just, you know, especially if you've got a lot of resonance in a room, if you're playing a big hall with lots of hard surfaces and you're getting a lot of resonance, you know, things that you want to be taking out are like maybe 250, 100 hertz, maybe even as far as, you know, 400 or 500 hertz. Remove a tiny little bit, see how it sounds. Obviously, it's just a question of seeing how it sounds and balancing. It's all about balance, and it's all about listening and the type of room and how you're singing and all these other things. So basically, I mean, when I'm using this, when I do use this, you know, obviously I've got different settings here. So I'll take this one for example. I like EQ pedals, so you know, take this one for example. I'll take out all 100 hertz. Oh, why didn't I get this before? Let's just set this flat. Okay, so let's quickly get to the point here. So I'll take out as much hundreds as I can. Usually you can't, you know, you can't take enough 100 out for me. That's still not enough, you know. Obviously it'll be starting to come up to, you know, if you take out a lot of 100 hertz, it'll start to affect things higher up. But with this pedal, you know, when I'm using it for vocals, you can't take out enough 100 hertz. So that's right to the floor. Then tiny bit, if I'm singing low down and I want a certain sound, if I'm singing almost talking like how I am now, and you need clarity, you know, because you've got a lot of resonance in the room and you're singing low down, it's bassy, take out some 200 hertz. You know, it'll give you much more clarity than, you know, adding a lot of sibilance and you know, feedback and things like that, or screeching feedback. That's all you're adding with that. Or sometimes you might need a little bit, but more times than not, I'm more likely to take a little bit out. Most times with EQ, I'm more likely to be taking stuff out. So okay, so then take a little bit of that out. Maybe even take out some 400, possibly. Not often, but you know, depends. All depends. But definitely play with this area. 250. If you've got 250, I prefer that, because that's the real muddy area. So you take out some of that. It's better than adding 3.2K any day of the week. You know, because if you add in, when you add in with EQ effects, what you're doing is you're using processors, and you know, it's adding color to to the signal. Whereas when you're cutting, you're not colouring the signal as much. You're not adding character. Sometimes you want character, sometimes you want colour, and if you do, maybe add a little bit of 1.6, and it'll have its own unique sound. Every EQ pedal will have its own unique sound. I'm going to try and keep this video under 20 minutes, so I'm nearly there now. So I've got some good points to make. So there you go. So brightness there. Then if I'm singing high up, if I'm singing something that's a little bit shouty, a little bit, you know, maybe I'll take out some of the higher frequencies. Maybe even take out some of this. But I may, at this point, sometimes if you're singing in that style, you want to use masking. You want to hit the compressor. I know everything I've just said, but this time, if you're singing in a really, and if you find that your vocals are really harsh, take out a bit of 3.2. Take out, some that's like a shelf. Take some of that out. A little tiny bit. I'm being extreme there. Maybe just a tiny, tiny, tiny amount. It's very sensitive, so you won't be adding that much. But you want the masking, and then it'll give you, obviously it'll give you the warmth that you need, and it'll hit your compressor. So sometimes you might need that. Okay, so that's that covered. Okay. Yeah, the other thing is that I'm going to say is sometimes, I don't know if it's just my imagination because this is new, but I'm just going to quickly talk about what feels like a built-in compressor with this amp. So sometimes when I'm singing into it, I feel like if I say something suddenly, I suddenly go into like quite a loud section of singing. Um, there's a there's the compressors don't always work instantly, and that's kind of what you want sometimes. A lot of the times, um, so sometimes if you go, hey, and you go loud suddenly, you hit the compressor, and then the hail come through really loud, and then everything afterwards will be kind of a lot quieter, and it's like as if you've hit the compressor and the compressor has then come down, but it's had that little slight delay to it. So I've been working on a technique of maybe, if you go to your microphone and then as you kind of singing loud, you suddenly come into the microphone, but you start a little bit back and then you come into it, you know. So it's like, hey, and then you're into it loud there. But it's difficult to explain, but it's something that, you might want to experiment with it, try, see if, because then you're not suddenly, the compressor's not suddenly pulling everything down. You're giving it time to gradually come in. And then I feel like if you hit the compressor hard, then it seems to pull the volume, and everything's really, your voice is really sort of muddy and down. But if you kind of get to the microphone and then hey, onto the microphone quite fast, but just to give the compressor a chance to work. It seems to keep the vocals a lot brighter. So I mean, it's something. I don't know. Maybe it's just my imagination. Maybe there's absolutely no compression whatsoever, but that's how it feels. It's just something I came across, and it seemed to work. So okay, well there we go. Um, yeah, I managed to keep it under 20 minutes, and yeah, I think this thing's great. It's got so much. I totally recommend it if you haven't got one already. But yeah, I just thought I'd have a little chat about that, and yeah, see what you think. Thanks for watching.